was 2019, and I remember, I was making a lot of money, but everything then life happened. I was not fulfilled. I was stressed. I was dealing with a lot of demons myself. And at the same time, my best friend died from an overdoses. Basically got into the hands of one of these body brokers, I later discovered. And then all of a sudden I just had a reality check. I don't know if because I hit 40 years old and I had a midlife reflection. And so I was like, is this really what I want to do? Majority of that portfolio was very concentrated on verticals that is popular. So traditional healthcare, personal injury lawyers was the biggest vertical, tech companies, mortgage companies. And I was like, how am I making the world a better place?
Welcome to Recovery Reach. My name is Clint Mally. Today, I'm joined by Elev8's own owner, founder, Gary Garth. Thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today.
Thanks for having me, Clint. It's great to be back.
So I have talked to you about marketing before, a lot, actually. I've been on your podcast. We've had a lot of different talks, but I actually know very little about the background of Elev8 and how you got into this industry. So I'm really excited to dive into the history behind that. Gary, maybe set the stage for us. Tell us about your agency. What are the services that you offer? How big your team is, the kind of centers that typically make up your client portfolio, that kind of thing.
Yes, absolutely. So we cater exclusively for behavioral health. So SUD, mental health focus, all levels of care. And we have a smallest facility, I think, was 6 beds. A few startups actually, where we've been there from like ground zero, basically building it up for them. And our largest is like multi-location, 1,000 beds almost, so a larger player. So completely different dynamics in 20 plus states. And last time I checked, we were at 46 clients. We launched a little over 3 years ago, so it's a fairly new company. There was a lot of resources and experience and capital. So not a conventional out of your garage startup per se, but new still to the industry. Team is about 30 people in total. And yeah, we're growing. We offer like 3 services as a whole. We basically consider us like 360-degree patient acquisition. So our goal is acquiring patients in the most cost-effective way and thereby creating sustainable impact so that they can expand to a second location, third location, more levels of care, and getting people connected to the care they deserve. So my background is I worked 10 years with Google channel sales. It was like big project and enabled 200 marketing agencies and 5,000 advertisers. So you would think that I'm very Google biased, and then afterwards worked with Microsoft for a couple of years. But I always say we're publisher agnostic. So, a facility comes to us, it depends on, is Google Ads the right choice? Is Recover.com? How should we shift budgets around? Microsoft Ads, should they invest in the brand building, SEO? And then as it has evolved, it's become very evident that, you can't just do demand generation. So we have basically 3 departments. I call it Elev8 Media, Elev8 Tech, and Elev8 Sales. So basically making sure that the phone is ringing. And Elev8 Tech, it's all about system processes and making sure those leads don't fall through the cracks. And Elev8 Sales is essentially admissions enablement and business development enablement to make sure that they have the right non-reciprocal partnerships in place, that the admissions team is having adequate follow-ups and handling all the calls at the preferred rate and no missed calls. So that's essentially what is needed in order to get the return. So I started out very heavily on market, and I was like, holy cow, we need to expand our service offerings, because otherwise there's not necessarily always an ROI.
So, and you guys do website design, things like that, social media ads, PPC, all the ways in which somebody might SEO, all the ways in which somebody might acquire a patient, to your point. But you don't just stop there, because as you mentioned, sometimes when people call, if your admissions process isn't set up, if you don't have a great call flow, if you're not scoring leads, if you don't have the right business development connections, then it actually doesn't matter. So you need both. You need like a more comprehensive system.
Exactly.
So you've expanded that over the last 3 years. Is that right?
Yeah. So I had the privilege, again, as been in marketing for 25 years, and worked with a lot of top agencies. I was enabling agencies for Google so they could sell PPC services. It could be a conventional SEO or website or creative agency. It was even like Univision, like for TV stations, and how they could add digitalized products. So I had a lot of experience. I could see, what kind of solutions work. I knew all about the different dashboards, attribution, how all the different systems should be connected. I saw like the top performing agencies, what they did. And that's essentially what gave birth to Elev8. It was like, let's piece it all together and cater for behavioral health exclusively and help get some patients admitted.
Now, there's like a lot of agencies, obviously, and there's even not a small amount of behavioral health agencies.
Yeah.
What made you feel like Elev8 needed to enter the game? What was it how did you differentiate yourself?
So the backstory is, if we have time for it, it was 2019. My last company, we were like 5 times Inc. 5000, fastest growing company. It was going very well.
What kind of company was that?
It was basically, we did white label PPC and SEO solutions for marketing agencies. So Google and Microsoft, Meta will come to us, and then at the end of the day, enable us with introductions to say, here's this company. And I would go out and do the sales training, enable them and give them all the systems and all that. It was 2019. And I remember, I was making a lot of money, but everything then life happened. I was not fulfilled. I was stressed. I was dealing with a lot of demons myself. And at the same time, my best friend died from an overdoses. Basically got into the hands of one of these body brokers, I later discovered. And then all of a sudden I just had a reality check. I don't know if because I hit 40 years old and I had a midlife reflection. And so I was like, is this really what I want to do? Majority of that portfolio was very concentrated on verticals that is popular. So traditional healthcare, personal injury lawyers was the biggest vertical, tech companies, mortgage companies. And I was like, how am I making the world a better place? I'm just helping these people, these, excuse my French, some of them scumbags and not paying taxes, these tech companies on growing. And so I started looking into this industry. And so everything really came together and I decided to sell my shares in the company, which was great. I needed a reset. And then I invested into 2 boutique overseas luxury facilities, one in the Dominican and one in Canada. My goal was to because I was like, okay, I'm going to reshape this industry. This is what people need. I know what they need. So they brought me in to be like CMO and partner and investor. Unfortunately, it was February 2020 and there was 14 months of travel restrictions. Couldn't travel in and out to Canada. So I burned a lot of money, but it was a blessing. It was a blessing because, and not to compare myself with Steve Jobs, but you can only connect the dots looking backwards. I'm not a clinician. I'm not a therapist. Who am I to fool I can operate a facility? But I'm a great marketer. And so instead, when I was sitting there those months doing my business plan and research and interviewing agency, I just found that there was a couple of good ones, but the majority was SEO Snake Oil salesman. I was asking, what's the expected learning curve? What's the expected cost per lead opportunity, admit? And everything was we'll have to see. There's no promises and algorithms. And I was like, if you know a vertical, because I know that from experience, and you have experience, you can predict to some extent. You have some benchmarks. And then I saw just that gap that there was so many people that needed treatment and facilities not at full census. I was like, there's something wrong here. So I said, let me instead try to combat these body brokers by helping some of the good folks, some of the good facilities, providers will get into full census. And I shifted gears and cut my losses. And then I started Elev8. It's been a ride ever since. So, but I also knew that after talking with these agencies, okay, what does the market need? So everything in my company is all about data. It has to be backed up by data. So setting up dashboards, figuring out how to do, and you're familiar with all this, how to rate leads, how to have proper attribution and tracking and dashboards so you can make informed decisions. And I felt that that's what the industry needed. So I said, we're going to double down on this. We're going to create something that at that point didn't exist. And we're going to lead with ROI focus. We're going to lead with being data-driven and transparent, show what we did, explain why we did it, and what to expect.
And the industry, especially at that time, but even now, is kind of a time machine that you're seeing that only now are we starting to catch up with a lot of other types of industries. With the things like data dashboards and multi-source lead generation and more complex systems overall. And it's only getting more and more complex.
Yeah.
So it seems like you saw this opportunity I've worked in other industries where this was built out more and it's not built out in this really important industry where people's lives are at stake.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Especially when you compare with software as a service, which I focused a lot on, is It's all about numbers and KPIs and very specific on the CAC to LTV ratio, all those numbers. But here was a lot of guesswork. Like, we don't really know. We're putting in $500,000 in Google Ads, and the census is full. There's a growing need, and thankfully there's also a transformation. There's much more focus on it now. Yeah.
So in the last 3 years, which it blows my mind that it's 3 years, because I feel like it just feels longer, and you've also already made such an imprint on the industry. Like, it's hard to find people who don't know you in the industry now.
Thank you. Go big or go home. That's what I was like. We're gonna make a mark here.
If they don't know your name, I'm like, the tall Viking gentleman that you see walking around. They're like, oh yeah. But when you think about over the last 3 years, there's still been a lot of turbulence within the industry. With your agency, maybe what was like one of the hardest seasons that you kind of had to endure?
Any entrepreneur can resonate with this, and especially if you're bootstrapped, then it's always going to be a certain period of burn. And me, I didn't want to compromise on our standards. I want this; it has to be like that, and you have to go out and educate. And this industry is very relationship driven, and you have to build trust, and you have to speak the language. So I think I underestimated that learning curve. At one point, I remember I started out building a sales team right out of the gate, right? And we then to put pressure. And I think one of the lessons was like really to be selective about the clients we would take on, right? In the beginning, and took on some clients, and on paper they looked great. It was like spent big budgets on Google, but it was like these out of network, California. It's like, and very not transparent. And I felt like those relationships was just difficult, impossible to build upon. And it's not essentially the ideal client profile. So making the decision, essentially, we fired two. I remember just the point to say, like, I'd rather take losses for a couple of months and stand down, so the entire team can also understand this is like what we're trying to accomplish, and we're not going to accomplish it with having partners where there's not complete alignment and trust. So that was hard, but one of the better decisions. And then, I mean, one that comes to mind, I don't know if this is the right setting, but like a little bit over 2 years ago, I had an incident. I was robbed and I got shot, and had like 6 days at the hospital and surgeries, and shot him in the head. So it ricocheted. And so that was very empowering for me. It was hard because the whole company and all those things was happening at once. I got very traumatized and started and started drinking again, and having problems because it was just such a traumatic experience. But at the same time, after I overcame that fairly quickly, it just gave me a renewed motivation. So I think those kind of like sometimes, after winter comes spring, as you say, right? So that's probably the best lessons and the hardest scenarios over the last couple of years.
How did you come back after something like that? And we have time, so as much as you feel comfortable saying, like, how do you go from getting, you said it was a ricochet?
I mean, I could show you the pictures afterwards, but basically I was sitting in my car, and they put in the gun, and they're like, give me da-da-da. And some motion happened, and the guy apparently was intoxicated and shot. And so it cracked my skull, but went through the roof, actually. So the doctors kept saying, you have a higher purpose. You're here for a reason. You have a guardian angel. And I had like big hole and inner bleedings. But so 1 centimeter more, I would not sitting here with you today. So after a while, I just used that as motivation. Say, maybe the big guy upstairs got a plan with me, so I gotta honor that opportunity. And that's what made me like, okay, well, now we're gonna double down and launch the podcast and start all these different initiatives and new products, etc. In hindsight, maybe I shouldn't have been here, so I'm gonna make sure to take advantage of it.
Yeah.
So it was a blessing, hard, very hard, of course, but a blessing.
What was the recovery period for something like that? Like,
I mean, I'm still recovering. Like, I think in the sense of like, mentally, you're spotting people all the time. You're like fight or flight kind of mode sometimes. But thankfully, I moved to Tampa. Tampa is really nice and quiet and safe. So I'm calmed down. I wear like the Whoop and Aura and all, measure my stress levels and all that. And now they're significantly down. So your environment really counts. Obviously, I'm preaching to the choir. Everybody knows that in in treatment. But it was hard because we had some cancellations because I couldn't be present and I was not fully there. We had some employee turnover. People lost faith. Obviously, it's like, okay, found us at the hospital, shot in the head. Better go looking for a new job.
Wow.
But the team that stayed are still here today, and we're stronger than ever. And I think it's one of those, it's a good story. Definitely something that amplifies the why.
Man. Yeah. So, I mean, you talked a little bit about this and I can actually relate because I had a brother who passed away from a heroin overdose after I sold my last company. And it's what got me into behavioral health. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe we never talked about this before.
No.
Yeah. So I had a brother who passed away from a heroin overdose, shared a bunk bed growing up. And both of my parents are still in active addiction. And when he passed away, though, I remember feeling like, how could I have not known? How come I didn't see the signs? How come just feeling really guilty,
yes.
And you think back to all the times and places in which you could have connected and said something that might have changed things, right? Like the million what ifs. But it really got me fired up to say, like, I want to make sure that we help other kids who might have been in this kind of situation, right? Young adults. And so that's what got me to start working at Sandstone, got me to start working in behavioral health. And you also mentioned how you were working with all of these different companies, but selling widgets or software or whatever wasn't the thing that left you fulfilled.
Yeah.
When you think about the work that you're doing now and the impact that you're able to help, especially understanding that you see the numbers more than anybody, and you're looking at people who are admitting into treatment, what does that mean to you?
I mean, it means everything. That's why some of our clients said, like, Gary, you never stop thinking. You always have a new idea. And it's because I'm constantly thinking about how this can be better. This is people's lives at stake. And I keep always thinking about my best friend, and I keep thinking about myself and friends that I didn't know deep but struggle and throw their lives away, right? It really has a ripple effect, right? So it's something to take very serious. And I tell my team that it's like, listen, if you're building this landing page, like that little thing that you just think is your task that you got to check off and click up your project management software, that may be the difference about getting somebody into treatment or not. So we got to take pride in every action. And what I then see is that, I think like ideal client profiles is like a few like that has been with us for a couple of years, and they came in, they were struggling, and they are great. They are so passionate. Everything is with the intention of helping. So it's a blessing. And you see those, we go from 5 beds, and then one went all the way up to 40 and opened up a second location, more levels of care. And I tell the team, that's 35 people extra on a monthly basis, right? And then all those families, and you multiply that by 12, that's a substantial amount of people that we're helping. But I try to hire a combination of people who's been in recovery, and also it's not a criteria, but I like if they have had it near and dear to them in their life, if they've had an experience there, because then they can relate to the pain. And I think that drives a little bit extra, gives us a little edge. It gives you a little bit extra drive.
Yeah. I mean, the people who I know are really doing things in this industry have some connection where mental health or addiction has impacted their life.
Yeah.
And as you talked about, it's not just the people, it's the reverberation of all the people that person impacts, the person who's in addiction. When we think about like behavioral health and we take a step back and we look at it, there's a lot of hype in marketing in general. There's a lot of hype in behavioral health marketing.
Yeah.
Maybe from your experiences, since you've been on like outside of the industry and now inside of the industry, what do you feel like is the most overrated thing in behavioral health marketing, or maybe just behavioral health? And then what do you think is like an underrated thing or a sleeper thing that more treatment centers should be thinking about?
Yeah, I think overrated is the over dependency on ads, right? I know I'm preaching to the choir here. You've spoken a ton about it. We've spoken about it, but really building a brand, right? It's what it's all about, and establishing, ambassadors for your brand, advocates. So everything that's intertwined with that, like good referral partners, that complement and position you the right way, having the strongest alumni program in the world, right? I mean, that's probably one of the most underutilized. So very often, I think it's that immediate like focus, like the phone's got to ring at this degree and so many phone calls, and this is the target. I'm like, is phone calls really the target? because I can give you phone calls all day, but let's focus on the quality of those calls. And that goes without saying. I think there's little patience for it. And essentially it's something organic, something robust, takes time to build, but that's when you build a legacy. And you build a company that's not going to be volatile for any market changes. So I think many facilities I work with, they need to diversify. They're too dependent on one channel. They have purely out of network and they're focusing on this one category. It's like one little, payer mix challenge or one influx in pricing or change in the algorithm and you're screwed, right? Yeah. So I think it's building a more robust brand overall with all the touch points that is related to that. And I would say, if anything, double down on Alumni, because that yields reviews, that yields comments on third-party publications and review sites. And that's what AI is doing right now, is pulling up citations, referring domains, comments, social media. So more than ever, you can't just build a landing page and drive traffic to it. It's about people they're gonna investigate more than ever, right? So
can I ask a follow-up? You're maybe the only digital marketing agency I've heard of that supports referral partnerships and alumni. How do you do that?
Yeah, great question. So to the extent, at one point, we even had a BD solution. So, I ran these large channel sales programs, so know a lot about sales, operations, enablement. So we did it with a few larger clients where I would go in and consult them and know how to do it, how to source. If you're just looking at conventional software as a service company that I used to work with, right? You have sales operations. They're finding your ICP, you're building your database, they're enriching it. It's very segmented. They have very concise sequences and nurturing, and all of that can be transferred to a BD team instead of having the BD team just randomly calling all the facilities. You're going to have it in a structured fashion. We would consult, support with them that you show up to a therapist, interventionist, a case manager, hospital. You can't just show the same deck. You would have vertical specific decks. So we started helping with that. I dialed down on it because it was very dependent on building a big sales team. That was not what I was doing. So now we just consult some. And essentially, that's one of those things that you think you have to have internally and organically. And I coach a lot on the founders, right? Sometimes they're just depending on hiring a sales rep. And it's almost like that BD rep, if they leave, it's almost like they leave with the Rolodex. They're almost terrified of it. Instead of you got to build a brand as an owner with all these different potential referral providers. So that's one. And it's because it directly translates. If you are not in network with everybody, or even if you're running large campaigns, you cannot avoid getting somebody who's making an inquiry that, either they're looking for specific niche that you don't cater. They have certain requirements for your facility, amenities, features outside your network. So you have to refer them out. So it just makes sense. And then you can reinvest that into your paid search budget. So it makes more. I think the big facilities now, and that's why so many people are bleeding when it comes to paid ads, is because they don't have that component. They don't have the admissions enablement, highly effective, and especially these lead aggregators that's in the market. They're just looking at this as a business. They put zero priority in the facility, right? It's some shack in California, right? And they're putting all the effort. They're super marketers. So you have these great facilities with all the right amenities and high overhead because they have a great program that they're competing with somebody that's all in on marketing. So you are entering a gunfight with a knife. And that's what I say to these facilities. You got to double down on this. The same emphasis and passion you put into your program and the clinical aspect of being patient-centric outcomes, the same we got to do in marketing. It's otherwise these other guys, unfortunately, will win. So that's an important aspect. And then the alumni, we do it with an alumni app, basically a planner. So when I open up those facilities for me, and I had been to treatment myself, and I was 30 days in, I leave and I was like, okay, I just go back or what's up? Right? There was a discharge session with a therapist where what are you going to do now? But it's that's not enough. It's almost like sending me straight into the wolves, right? So I was like, I should have a planner. So I created a planner for myself for these facilities where it's basically 6 months. You got to write down goals, exercise gratitude, establish healthy habits. So I figured out, okay, let's combine that with alumni. And when I then started Elev8, I was like, let me pass that on to our clients. We put the links to the GBP profile so that we train them on how to scan and get reviews. We do links to the alumni planner. So basically doubling down on enabling them with systems that can help them cultivate alumni engagement and BD efforts. Typically, it's like one-man band, the alumni coordinator alone in the world, basically.
Yeah. What's interesting about what you said is like if a treatment center is smaller and they're worried about the connections of some BD rep, kind of them leaving. Well, those connections should start with the co-founders and those people.
Yes.
Like you need to build those strong relationships with these people.
Yeah.
They're not your competitors. You cannot serve anybody. You cannot operate in a world in behavioral health and act like you can serve anybody.
Exactly.
And so like those relationships start with you, and then you kind of hand off these relationships to liaison the relationships.
There you go.
But the ownership is on the leadership, the people who have equity in the company and the stake in that.
Yeah.
And that's a huge part of what they do is building these relationships.
And then you have like a consistent, I know that you wrote an article of where you interviewed all these marketing agencies, CMOs about what a deal census should look like from a channel distribution standpoint, right? And then you have a consistent channel. It will be a variable that aligns with your lead inflow with marketing investment. So it's worth investing. And, there's obviously a lot to unpack there, but if anybody was listening and say, okay, how can I make an impact tomorrow? Well, very easy. Start with the founder. You can outsource and hire somebody to do the work, but build outreach campaigns where they're connecting with the founder's profile with all these different providers. 1. 2, after you start establishing, and you can build a relatively ineffective outreach campaign, multi-channel touch points, go book meetings as a founder, and then send your BD guy out. Or I would say recommend having different tiers so that you take the large potential referral opportunities of your founder. You show interest in establishing this partnership. 3rd, but once that is built out, very easy, build a newsletter like you have it for your prospective patients and alumni. Build it for your referral partners. Tell them what's going on. Open houses, new programs. When are we in contract? New things, success stories. Most referral partners, they're just looking to make sure that this person gets the right treatment they deserve, and they're not top. So if you're top of mind, there's very easy wins, right? That most other industries would do. So I would encourage everybody to take those actions.
That makes sense. So you talked about what's underrated, which is business development and alumni investment. And I guess what you're saying is overrated is paid ads. Is that the overrated, or is there something else?
It's overrated. I mean, highly compared. It works. I mean, we have, I think, 4 million under management a month right now on Google alone, Meta, Microsoft ads too. But, invest in the brand. Invest in AI visibility. The minute you turn off the paid campaigns, and it's good, it's a good accelerator, but the music stops, right? There's no more inquiries the next day. But you build up AI visibility, so AI will talk you up. So they will like, okay, if people are searching now, which facility should I go to? And, can I allow to work from there? Can I use my cell phone? Can I allow pets? Like they're having those criteria conversations before even reaching out. So if you build a brand and they go to your social media profile and you have a ton of reviews and the GBP is aligned, and, then they contact you instead of, okay, we're experiencing diminishing returns and paid ads is plummeting, so let's just throw more money at it. No, you got to solve the root cause. It's not more budget that's going to solve it. And that's why I like data-centric approach with dashboards, is like, so we can understand what channel is actually performing and how they contribute. Because I think a tendency to look at last click attribution, like, oh, the BD guy once made a referral, so that we're going to change that in this, right? Or they went to the GBP profile to call, right? And now the SEO gets the full effort, not looking at the path to inquiry. So I think that's probably the biggest. And now with AI overviews and AI visibility, it's more important than ever, because that's what's going to differentiate. You're basically not going to exist if you don't build a brand.
So there's an analogy that I learned early on when I was getting into marketing. And basically what it said was that marketing is like a playground, right? Where there's no wrong way to start playing on a playground, right? Like if you took a child to a playground, you wouldn't say, no, you have to start on the slide and then you're going to go to the monkey bars. And then after that, we're going to, like that's not a thing.
Yeah.
But we treat behavioral health marketing that way. We assume that it's a linear thing. Whereas what you're describing is that everybody is going to be interacting with the different ways that somebody can find your brand in a different way. And sometimes the closer might be BD, and sometimes the closer might be your Google business profile, and everywhere in between. And there's no wrong way to do it, but they all work together. And They only work though if they're all speaking the same language.
Yes, my man.
If the message is same. Now, if I took that same playground and I had one item in an office park and another item in a wooded area and another item in someone's home, it changes things. And so it only works if it's all kind of connected. And so that's kind of what you're talking about, this messaging.
Exactly. And to add to that, basically, I think now and more important than ever is diversification on the channels and building brand consistency. But then also that ties in with operational excellence, I say, right? Because if your outcomes or your reviews, et cetera, is not in place, then that will directly spill into marketing. So more important than it was 6 months ago and a year ago, especially now, it's that this is really where you got to have that emphasis as a facility. Tied in with that is not siloing your data. So I feel like very often, most facilities, they don't even know the standard KPIs metrics. They don't have that, which is get the numbers, get that first in place. But then you have your EMR, you have your B2B, and you have the billing company, RCM, and then you have the marketing channels over here, and it's all siloed data instead of like understanding. Again, if you go back to the SaaS scenario, CAC LTV ratio, you go to, and I tried this a couple of times, you go to investors, you raise money, that's the metric. So, okay, I put in $1, this is the lifetime, we get 3. Here's a bigger check. When should I stop writing you checks, right? But here, no, we stop it here. We're not measuring the whole alumni, the lifetime patient value. We're not understanding because it's not interconnected. So I think not siloing your data and focusing on the operational excellence directly, spills into the marketing effort. So I know that's a lot of the things to handle at once, but we're talking about if you really want to scale the most effective way possible.
And if you're trying to get better results faster, starting with a partner like you, who that's what they do is they set this up, is a hack, right? It's like, sure, you could go and try and build this yourself, but if you want to get there faster, why not just do it with somebody who's already done it, right?
I mean, I get this all the time, and I'm like, listen, I tell clients, I don't need you. I sold my last agency for 8 figures plus. Like I do this to help you. I'm here to help you. You can't afford me if you just hire me as a consultant. And I tell them, like, listen, you can tell marketing agencies, there's a lot of hype, to your point. So choose always somebody that knows your vertical, because when you come to us, I know which publications have topical relevance to get your backlinks on, what you should pay. I know which directories are relevant, which ones are scams. I know where you get, so you shorten the learning curve. And the second thing to look for with the agency is, will they hold you hostage? Is it your data? Is it your intellectual property? Is your framework? And I always say, we build it out. Everything is under your email and your name. If we can't justify the value after month XYZ, we shouldn't be working for you, right? And I think that's the things you got to look for in an agency, because if you don't get a yes to all those different aspects, then they have their own agenda. You have a different agenda. It's not full alignment. So that applies to all other verticals as well, but especially here where you're talking cost per admin is $10K in some states for expensive channels. You really got to go to bed with the right marketing partner. So we basically evolved. Like I say, we're not a marketing agency anymore. We're growth accelerator, I call it. Like we basically come in and like, maybe we're not starting with marketing. Maybe it's the CRM enhancement, right? Because we don't want those leads falling through the cracks. Maybe we start with the alumni just to get that going. And essentially that's what I think is our main value proposition, and what helps facilities is that you're getting a framework that's been refined, right? And you can apply that, and you can take it and run with it, and you'll constantly get the learnings of us running campaigns for multiple facilities, because there is patterns, right? There's not huge deviations on how you market a facility. Obviously, it depends on your niche, your positioning, and all that, but that's relatively simple if you just know all the other things. So.
It's always a huge red flag to me too, when somebody can't give ballpark generalization numbers.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. It's like, as you mentioned, those agencies that are like, well, it all depends. It's like, yeah, but you should be able to say trends. You should be able to say benchmarks. And if you can't off the top of your head, that's a red flag.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And, I worked with you personally when I worked at a treatment center, and we had a great marketing setup, and we still needed insight. And it's great to have another perspective, because no matter how amazing your in-house marketers are, the one thing they can't give you is perspective. And an agency is going to help you a lot with that.
Yeah.
An agency doesn't have to disclose their client list, but they know what's working, right? And they see different fields and they're going to be able to put unique solutions in. So, you know, as a former client, I can just say like, that's extremely helpful information. And I did that, even though like I'm a savvy marketer, you know, and have understanding of it. It's great to have somebody else's perspective that can help do the things that aren't second nature to you.
Yes.
You know?
And speaking of numbers and benchmark, I just want to reference that. So if you go to our website and you go to, there's a section called Growth Calculator. We build that together. You can go in and see all those different benchmarks and estimates. And it's not down to the money accurate. I mean, there will be some fluctuations, but at least you'll have an idea what you should be spending, what you should expect, what the different expected conversion rates is per channel and CPA, et cetera.
Yeah, I may or may have not used that calculator before when helping walk recovery.com client through something.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so I think there's a ton of value in that. You know, we have two more questions. One is about kind of advice from the beginning of your marketing career, and then one's about maybe the future of behavioral health marketing. What's some advice that you got early on in your marketing career that turned out to be wrong?
Wrong. Okay. That's a lot. I mean, no, that's a loaded question. I think it's, you know, generalized. So many agencies is like the channel experts. Okay, we do this, but we don't do the other things. You have to hire somebody that understands that entire. They don't have to be a conversion rate optimization specialist on landing pages but they have to understand. They have to look at the heat maps. They have to correlate that with the campaign they're running. And that's something in the past. I remember when my old agency in the past was like, no, it stops with us. We're not responsible for this or the answering the phones and so forth. But if you don't have a marketer, I would say have skin in the game, was committed to also assessing those things and collaborating with the other stakeholders, it will never work. So I remember in the past that it was just like, no, we don't do this. So we only do this. And that's not but I think that's a misconception. Yeah, there's many other things too, but that's a big one.
Yeah, you hear it with agencies or marketers. Our whole job is to make the phone ring and then hands off. And if that's the case, then you're going to run into problems.
Yeah.
We run into problems with that with recovery.com advertisers. If we only look at people calling someone's profile and not, are they scoring leads? What is their answer rate? What is the call flow system that they use? What are the insurances that they're in network with?
Exactly.
You know, like if you don't look at the full context or have awareness of it, then you actually can't do even that part of just making the phone ring.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I would say, like, I would challenge anybody, pull 10 calls that are more than 5-10 minutes and listen to them, and you will identify maybe at least on one out of the 10 calls, but probably several, how there's a call was mismanaged or not handled. And then that may have not turned into the opportunity and then caused for you to pause, reduce the bid on that keyword or landing page, et cetera. And you're making decisions based on that instead of understanding that full spectrum, giving that feedback back. So it's huge because, you know, now you're steering in the wrong direction based on outcomes that's not within your control. So when clients come to us, I said, you go with CTM. We built this, like, our system where it does automatic lead rating. It pushes into dashboards and you have to follow it. And if you don't follow it, I don't want to work with you. We build a landing page. We have to build it on a subdomain under our server so it's not impacted by the core web vitals that are slow. We have to have an admissions enablement call with the admissions team once a month. And we pull anywhere between depends on the volume of call, but 2 to 5 calls. And my account managers have to listen to them and follow a call assessment script, because that's the only way that we at least have our finger on the pulse. Any facility owner or marketing director should be doing that with the vendors or in-house.
Agree.
Yeah.
So that's maybe bad advice you got in the past. When you think about the future, because you see inside of treatment centers a lot, you know, you see a lot of different types of treatment centers, as we were talking about, so important. What should more behavioral health leaders be thinking about when it comes to their treatment center?
I know I sound like a broken record, but it's really AI visibility and building a brand, right? Because you won't exist pretty much if that is not in place. when you take all those different things, I think it's about operational excellence. I would say that's more important than anything else. Not siloed data, understanding the entire patient journey, like from initial consideration to discharge and relapse rate. So to understand the entire, what are the triggers? And then that's what translates into a good brand when you do all those things.
Fair. Well said. Where can people go to learn more about you, Elev8, and all the awesome work that you're doing?
Yes. Go to our website, Elev8, Elev8.io. They have all the information there, or I'm very active on LinkedIn as well. Hit me up. I'll always reply.
Yeah. Awesome. Listeners, watchers, we will put the links for that. I'll include that calculator, that article that he mentioned, Elev8's website, his LinkedIn bio, all in the show notes in the description box below. Gary, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today.
Always a pleasure, Clint. Thanks for having me.